Okay, today, for this afternoon session, I really want to try to focus on the neck and shoulders as much as we can, okay? We've done a lot of full body work over the last week. So one of the hardest areas for us to work on ourselves is just behind the neck, okay? So you can do this in standing. I'm doing it in a kneeling position, which I find to be a little bit more comfortable for me, but to each his own. Sitting also would be fine, okay? So we're going to start with just making these very easy circles with the shoulders, okay? And we're going to try to really feel how this gentle movement pulls at the scalp, okay? So we're looking for the connection of the shoulder blades, which we're moving in gentle circles, and how this reaches our skull, okay? The very base of the skull in the back, or the top of the neck. Okay, when you get a sense of where this is attaching, grabbing onto the upper neck and the skull, I'm going to start to move the head from left to right in a rotation way, okay, like we're saying no. We're going to keep the shoulders moving very gently in circles while we move the head very gently back and forth, left and right. Good. Don't try to push to the limit of your neck. Just move very easy in a comfortable range. Again, your goal right now is to try to sense the muscles that connect to the top of the shoulder blades and how they interact with the neck. For example, when you turn your head to the left, you can kind of sense how the left shoulder is a little bit easier to lift and how the right shoulder feels like a little bit more tense. And that's happening because we're using the slack, taking the slack out of one side of the neck and feeding slack to the other side of the neck. So when we turn the head to the left, we can also feel this wrapping effect traveling down to the shoulders. Okay? So again, we're making small circles with the shoulders, and we're trying to feel how turning of the head relates to this movement in the shoulder blades. Okay. Now, as an experiment, we're going to leave the shoulders down resting, and as we turn the head to the left, we're going to repeat this 4 or 5 times and turn back to the middle. Okay? Very slowly, don't use any force, just make it very comfortable, and try to notice what you feel in the left shoulder. As you turn your head to the left, you're going to feel the left shoulder want to rise a little bit. Maybe just a little bit, maybe a lot, okay? But this is good. This is supposed to happen. We want this to happen. And we're going to use that to our advantage by letting the left shoulder lift a little bit. It's going to free up some space in the neck. Okay, let's try this to the right side. Turning to the right. We can feel how this starts to pull on the right shoulder blade and lift the right shoulder as we turn the head. This is supposed to happen automatically in the body based on the pulleys and levers of our muscles. So you shouldn't have to lift the shoulder as much as try to notice the connection between the shoulder and the head. Okay. Let's now notice if we look up, both shoulders actually start to feel more relaxed as we feed slack to the back of the neck. And as we look down, we can really feel how the back of the neck and the shoulders go under strain as the shoulders start to lift up very slightly. Okay? As we go back to neutral and look up, feel how this actually feeds slack to the shoulder blades and they feel more loose. As we bring the head down, the top of the shoulders become under stretch and actually start to feel more tense. Okay? So we can see clearly that flexing the neck draws tension into the top of the shoulder blades. Extending the neck actually feeds slack to the shoulder blades. Turning the head to the left very carefully, we can feel how this pulls the left shoulder up and releases the right shoulder down. Let's repeat that a few times, noticing that. Good, and as we look to the right, we can notice that the right shoulder draws up and the left shoulder relaxes. If we start to combine the breathing with this, we're going to notice a few more things. Okay, so we'll take the same basic movement, turning the head to the left and back to the middle. But this time, as we turn the head to the left, we're going to breathe in very easily, allowing the ribs to move. And breathing out to come back to the middle. Breathing into the left, and breathing out to the middle. Let's do that 3 more times. Very easy range of motion. Don't force anything. Good. Now notice if you try the same movement, turning the head to the left, even without breathing in, you should be able to notice more movement in the entire rib cage on the left side of the body as you turn to the left. And as we turn to the left now, the left shoulder comes up, but also the ribs start to open, allowing some movement in the torso. This happens naturally. Let's try the same thing to the right now. Looking to the right, breathing in, breathing out. For me, I notice my ribs are harder to open on the right side for whatever reason today. Very gentle, very soft. Two more times to the right, breathing in. Try to feel the movement in the ribs and returning to a docile neutral. Good. Let's try this again without the breathing included and see if we can notice that when we turn to the right, now our ribs are also involved in the turning of the head. And we can feel that the ribs open to give more freedom to the neck, allowing the right shoulder to come up and the ribs on the right side of the body to open slightly. Let's incorporate the same breathing into the extension movement of the neck. As we breathe in here, exhale to neutral. Here we can see that the breathing in actually causes quite a bit of tension in the front of the throat, and then we're able to use this as a way to stretch open the front of the neck. So as we breathe in, looking up carefully, breathing out carefully down. I'm really not trying to look so far as to make it to the ceiling. I'm really only maybe getting to 45 degrees with my head. From the side, you can see I'm here. This movement is subtle enough for me to feel the change in the tensions of the body. Looking up beyond this will probably just cause tension in my neck if I go all the way to here. While that can be a nice aggressive way to stretch the deeper part of the front of the neck, for today, let's remain in the very comfortable realm and try to sense with our mind what's going on inside the body. Also notice that as you breathe in, lifting the head up, this also pulls the chest upwards. It becomes a little bit easier to elevate the front of the ribs and the sternum, or the breastbone, as we do this. Good. Now let's explore this movement without the breath attached to it. If we raise the head now, you should notice that the rib cage is more willing to tilt upwards and move with the neck, providing slack to it. Now let's integrate the breath into the flexion movement. Remember, when we dropped the head before, we noticed that there was a subtle tension that develops on the top of the shoulder blades and travels up to the base of the skull. So we breathe in, looking down. In this pattern, you can feel how both shoulders begin to elevate as you look down and breathe, as if they were going to continue upwards toward your ears. This happens naturally from the rising of the rib cage. We can also notice that when we breathe looking downwards, that the air must now travel to the space between our shoulder blades. As we gently look down and gently inhale, you can perceive a very noticeable but soft stretch between the shoulder blades. Good. Now let's try that movement without breathing in, just moving the head alone. You should be able to notice some increased movement in the shoulder blades as they're more willing to accommodate the pattern of looking down. Okay, now let's explore the side-to-side movements in the neck and how this relates to breathing. First, let's warm up the side-to-side movement by swaying our head very gently back and forth in a palm tree-like way. Notice how when you flex the head to the right side of the neck in this case feels pretty soft. The left side that's opening, that's stretching, actually feels more tense. And as we hang to the other side, we can notice that the same thing happens in reverse. The side we're stretching actually feels tense, and the side that we're flexing to becomes soft and pliable. Let's stretch a few more times side to side, noticing where that tension travels to. The upper trapezius muscle, which connects to the base of the skull and is largely what everybody wants to rub and take care of, which causes a lot of problems for us. The upper trapezius attaches from the base of the skull and runs actually to the collarbone. Most of us feel that it runs more to our shoulder blades or the area between our back. But if you follow the collarbone out to the side, tapping on it, you'll get to the top of the shoulder. And that will feel like a lump, the little lumpy thing on top of the shoulder. Okay? Coming off of that lumpy thing is this upper trapezius fibers that run up the back of our neck to the skull. And this is what we feel when we lean the head to the side. We can feel a gentle stretch come into the upper trapezius to the collarbone. This can be felt more clearly by tapping on the collarbone while you're in the stretch. Okay, this should feel like you're hitting the bone in the very front of the body. If you want to tap the muscle also, this is fine. Okay, good, a little bit side to side. Now let's incorporate the breathing into this and see what we can notice about how our neck relates to the rest of our body. As we hang the head to the right and breathe in, you can notice that this increases the stretch that we feel on the stretching side. And as I breathe in, the ribs raise, and this creates a bigger stretch in that upper trapezius muscle. Okay, let's do the same side a few times in a row. Notice how each time you repeat this and breathe in, you feel the stretch slightly differently than the last time. Perhaps a little bit deeper or in a different location. And that's how you know that you are making progress on an area, as the same movement produces a different kind of stretch. You can feel confident that you have removed some level of restriction in that movement. Okay, let's turn to the other side now. And notice that as we hang the head, we produce the initial stretch. And breathing in now, we can create a more gentle, natural stretch for the neck. Everything's still moving very slow with very little discomfort. Also, we can notice in this flexion pattern that as we hang the head to the left, feel the stretch into the right, when we breathe in, you can also notice what's going on inside of the rib cage. In the flex pattern, you'll notice that the side you're leaning away from, the stretch side, it's much easier to open that rib cage. As you breathe in, the air naturally goes into that half of the body. As we hang the head to the other side now, you can feel the opposite happen as you breathe in. Notice how the movement of the ribs facilitate a deeper movement of the neck in almost any direction that we move. Good. Now let's evaluate the pure rotation without any breathing involved. As we checked in at the beginning, try to notice if the neck is more free to move now. And more importantly, for long-term gains, what can you notice in the movement inside of the rest of the body? Now, when you turn your head to the right, can you notice how the ribs open up on that side? And how this movement can be felt all the way to the waist, even just by moving the neck. And as we turn to the left, do you feel that the left ribs are more likely to open and join in, alleviating any of the, what we would call local movement in the body? So here we've gone over some examples of how the neck relates to the rest of the body. And this is all umbrellaed under the fundamental concept that no movement in the body can happen on its own. That even by moving the neck slightly, if you pay enough attention and are relaxed enough, you can notice changes all the way down to your feet. Good. By now, you might be noticing that also the hands are feeling more relaxed and perhaps a little bit warm with circulation. This really means that we did a great job trying to loosen some of the tension around the blood vessels and nerves in the front of the body. Okay, I'd like now to start to build the circulation in the neck muscles, as we have just created a better mind-body connection and released some of the muscles. Now it's time to pump some circulation into the smaller muscles of the cervical spine. And we'll do this by creating a shaking of the head in a yes direction. Okay, this movement is going to come from as high up in the body as you can find, perhaps somewhere around the ear. See, the actual axis of rotation of the head is way up here behind the ear, but mostly at ear level. If I move from lower down in the neck, you can see that my head bobbles back and forth and disturbs my front to back balance. Try this a few times very slowly and notice how your hips and back start to strain in order to balance the head. When you're in neutral, the body can relax, and we're able to access a smaller nodding movement from higher up in the neck. As we develop the movement higher up in the neck throughout the day, we're more likely to use this muscle set to look around like an owl with our head on a swivel, rather than using the bigger parts of the neck that throw us off balance and cause tension throughout the system. So as we improve our skill with this basic nodding, we're going to take a few minutes now of relaxed breathing while we develop the forward nod, saying yes, okay? It's a very agreeable movement, and everyone's going to be happier that you're saying yes right now. Okay, so we're just going to take long exhales, breathing in, easy, breathing out. Notice that each time you exhale, the upper ribs start to relax. See if we can explore how this relates to the movement in the neck. As we breathe out, and the upper chest relaxes, we can perceive a slight change in pressure inside of the neck, perhaps not so slight for some people. We're also left with the sensation that the neck is getting longer as the upper ribs descend on the exhale. The neck cannot really get taller. We cannot really, the idea of drawing our posture up with a string can be sort of misleading. A lot of times that can lead us into a pattern that looks more like this, lifting the chest in an effort to try to raise the crown of the head. That lifting of the chest is not very natural for the body. As we know, the lifting of the chest comes from looking up. This is how the chest lifts. So when we combine the wrong movement of trying to lift the head upwards, we're actually creating this type of flexion as we try to drive the head upwards. So rather than getting involved in these messy patterns, it's much more enjoyable for the body to feel that the neck is getting longer by lowering the ribs down, that the ribs are getting more relaxed and the shoulders are getting more relaxed. And this allows us to perceive a longer neck in the body. Okay, so the head stays where it is and everything continuously drips off of the head. Okay, let's imagine everything below the neck dripping down as we take these exhales and continue to nod the head yes. Notice how, while you nod the head, any movement in the ribs, either exhale or inhale, produces a change in the quality of the movement at the base of the head. As we breathe in, we probably experience increased resistance to the movement. As we breathe out, generally the movement gets easier to continue to nod yes. This is important to understand because we need to try to create an environment in the rib cage where the ribs are down and the neck is long. And we need to try to live there as much as we can. You can feel this most impressively at the bottom of the exhale. If you follow the exhale to the bottom and rest at the bottom, as we've covered in other sessions using Buteyko breathing, you will notice that there's very little change in the resistance of the neck and that it's easier to move at the bottom of the exhale. Breathing out, the ribs have relaxed. Breathing in and out, resting at the bottom. Breathing in, breathing out, resting at the bottom. And here we can really start to notice that as we spend time at the bottom of the exhale, when we sense our internal body, it's a lot easier to feel all the muscles and bones moving, as our body is not confused, or I should say distracted, by the sensory input of the ribs moving during inhalation and exhalation. As we breathe, even though it's a largely subconscious process, there's still movement that takes place in the body, and our body still sends that to our brain to understand, my ribs are moving right now. But for exercise, we want to tune into the neck. So in order to get rid of this distraction, we can sit at the bottom of the exhale with a relaxed torso and feel more clearly how our head moves in this nodding position. Breathing out, resting at the bottom, sensing deeply what is happening at the shoulders and neck. Good. Let's apply some of the same tricks to the shaking of the no pattern. Okay. Now, earlier we started the session by looking at bigger movements, turning the head all the way, noticing the shoulder lifting and the ribs lifting. The same patterns can be felt even on a small scale, but we need to look in different places. Now, as we turn our head left and right just a small degree, you can feel when you turn to the left, that tension develops on the left side of the neck. And as we turn to the right, tension develops slightly in the front right side of the neck. Let's use our Buteyko breathing to try to hone in on this place and free the top rib and scalene muscles, which are mostly involved in tension in the neck. Okay, so again, breathing in and out, resting at the bottom, and turning the head side to side very slightly as if saying no. Also notice how this no movement involves more of the neck than the nodding movement. The nodding movement can be isolated to the upper neck and base of skull. The turning movement, no matter how small, is going to involve this big old muscle here, which comes down to our collarbone. So we can start to feel the impact of this turning movement in the front of the neck. And now we're going to place the hands just below the collarbone on the ribs. Okay, you don't have to be super accurate, just below the collarbone on the ribs. And you're going to push in slightly and hang the weight of your arms down so that the upper ribs and chest are being drawn downwards, very slightly, okay? And we're going to continue this no movement while we make the breathing. Breathing in and out. resting at the bottom. Breathing in. Good. Now let's look at how the jaw relates to the neck. For this, we need to look mostly at the flexion and extension pattern in the body. As we raise our head upwards, the jaw is most definitely involved in this movement. We have two options. One is to keep the jaw entirely closed and look up. Here you can feel how this racks up enormous tension in the jaw and creates some stretch in the front of the neck, but mostly tension in the jaw. Now, if we do the opposite and allow the jaw to slowly open as we look up, we can see that we're now stretching the jaw open in a very relaxed manner by leaving the jaw where it is and tilting the head upwards. This is an unusual way to stretch the jaw, but it's actually the best way because jaw problems always stem from neck tension at the top of the neck. So by doing the jaw stretch this way, we can begin to coordinate the muscles in the back of the neck with the opening and closing of the jaw in a much more realistic way, rather than just a chewing motion relentlessly, which leaves you with very little information about how the jaw relates to the neck. So again, breathing in very gently, letting the jaw hang. Breathing out, sitting at the bottom, and you can take the same movement at the bottom of the exhale. Breathing in, breathing out. Now moving. Breathing in, breathing out. Now lifting. Breathing in, breathing out, and lifting again. Notice how by using the mind to pay attention to the jaw during this movement, we continue to get more and more release from the jaw with each repetition, without necessarily going deeper into the movement. And this trick can be applied to any muscle in the body, which will be accentuated by moving at the bottom of the exhale so our body is not busy thinking about breathing. Now let's combine some of the more complex movements in the neck by tilting the head to the side and shaking the head no. Again, breathing in, breathing out, and spending time at the bottom with no air. In this pattern, you can feel how the side of the neck that you're flexing away from, the longer side, is under quite a bit of tension, gentle tension, and is doing the work of turning the head. It actually feels easier to return to neutral than to turn the head and look down at the same time. Good, let's explore the same movement on the other side of the body. Breathing in, breathing out, and moving at the bottom. Good. Let's revisit the very gentle extension movement. Great. If you're starting to yawn, this is great. This means that we've really produced a relaxation response in the body. I hope you can notice some of that in your body as well. I feel my hands are quite a bit more warm than before. The circulation in general, my eyesight feels a little bit more clear, and I feel a little bit more ready to handle whatever problem is going to come my way next. It's really important to understand that this came from two aspects. One, moving with very little force, and two, moving with our mindfulness on specific parts of the body. And that's something you can apply to every movement that I've shown you so far and going forward. Anytime you put the mind's eye into one spot and just pay attention to how it feels as you produce movements, the body will naturally make adjustments for you. Instead of thinking, I need to stretch my jaw wide open, it's much more kind to approach the body and say, hey, have you looked at your jaw opening lately? This is what it feels like in a relaxed manner. And again, we can teach ourselves to move and exist in a less tense way with more freedom by teaching our body to move that way. Another aspect that produces this relaxation response is the dedicated time that you are all putting in to show up for the exercise. Because you're fully focused on your own movement and body right now, it's a lot easier to access these things. So when you're practicing on your own, even if you were taking just maybe 30 seconds on the sidewalk to move your head like this, as me and Dr. Tatz propose all the time, you can still use all the same tricks by zoning in on what you're actually trying to do. As I move my head like this, even for 30 seconds on the subway, I can feel my neck moving. And this is how it's moving, and I can notice that. And that will produce the response that gives you longer term relaxation. Okay,